The turning point. The Galactic Coalition War Council chamber fell silent as the holographic display flickered to life. The vast, domed room, designed to accommodate representatives from 17 species, now felt empty despite being at full capacity. Downcast eyes and slumped postures told the story before Admiral HFY Loreforge could even speak. 12 more systems lost in the past lunar cycle, the Admiral announced, his crystalline exoskeleton reflecting the red emergency lighting. His 4 upper appendages twitched nervously as he manipulated the display. The Corax have adapted to our defensive patterns. They've breached the Epsilon corridor. Murmurs of despair rippled through the chamber. For 8 years, the Coalition had fought the Corax, a hive-minded species of ruthless efficiency. And for 8 years, they had watched their territories shrink, their fleets diminish, and their hope fade. The Epsilon corridor was our last hard barrier, said High Chancellor Mira of the Solari, her luminous skin pulsing with distress. Without it, they have a direct path to our core worlds. General Vrakith of the Orn Confederation slammed his massive fist on the table. Another strategic retreat. Is that your proposal, Admiral? We retreat until there is nowhere left to go. Our analysts project total coalition collapse within 60 days, the Admiral replied, his voice hollow. We've exhausted our strategic options. The chamber erupted into arguments, accusations, and desperate pleas. 8 years of retreats, 8 years of watching their civilizations crumble under the relentless Corax advance. 17 species facing extinction, united only in their impending doom. Then the chamber doors hissed open. A single figure entered, humanoid, shorter than most present, clad in the dark blue uniform of Earth's Defense Force. Commander Elena Reyes walked with measured steps to the center of the room, her olive skin looking pale under the emergency lights, her black hair pulled back in a severe knot. Her presence wasn't imposing physically, but something in her unwavering gaze silenced the room. I've reviewed your tactical data, she said without preamble. Her voice was calm, almost detached. Your defeat is not inevitable. Admiral HFY Loreforge's crystalline features hardened. Commander Reyes, Earth has contributed the least to this war effort. Your world sits safely in the outer rim, protected by our sacrifices. What could you possibly offer now? Elena didn't flinch. A new approach. She gestured, and the holographic display shifted to a detailed map of Coalition and Corax territories. You've been fighting defensively, reacting to every Corax move. You establish positions, they adapt and overwhelm you. You retreat. This cycle guarantees your defeat. And what would humans suggest? Asked High Chancellor Mira, curiosity cutting through her despair. Give me command authority over the 7th Fleet, Elena replied. The chamber exploded in protest. The 7th Fleet represented 20% of the Coalition's remaining military strength. Absurd, General Vrakith roared. Humans have never commanded a multi-species force of that size. Your way leads to certain extinction, Elena countered, her voice remaining level. My species has a long history of winning against overwhelming odds. Through what means? Asked Kirnav, the Lantine ambassador, his tentacles undulating with suspicion. By abandoning conventional thinking, Elena said. By accepting that victory sometimes requires terrible choices. Chancellor Mira studied the human carefully. We've heard rumors of Earth's military history. Your species has a reputation for ruthlessness. Elena met her gaze directly. We prefer to call it determination. The Corax fight without restraint or mercy. Why should we handicap ourselves with outdated notions of warfare? The room fell uncomfortably silent. Admiral HFY Loreforge finally spoke. What would you do with the 7th Fleet? I would take it to Corax Supply Base Theta 9, Elena said, pointing to a location deep in enemy territory. That's madness, General Vrakith protested. It's surrounded by 3 Corax battle groups. Exactly, Elena replied. They believe it's impregnable. They don't guard it properly. But Theta-9 processes 80% of the biomatter they use to grow their war vessels. Destroy it, and we cripple their production capacity. The council members exchanged wary glances. How would you propose to accomplish this suicide mission? Admiral Xeltoric asked. I need 72 hours to prepare, Alina said. I'll provide operational details only to those with direct need to know. The council chamber erupted again, but Chancellor Mira raised her hand for silence. Why such secrecy, Commander? She asked. Because we have a security breach, Alina stated flatly. The Corax have anticipated your moves with statistically impossible accuracy for the past 6 months. Shocked silence fell over the room. That's a grave accusation, Admiral Xeltoric said quietly. It's a fact, Alina replied. I've analyzed every engagement. The Corax don't adapt to your strategies. They know them in advance. More uncomfortable silence followed as council members looked at each other with newfound suspicion. Finally, Chancellor Mira spoke. The situation is desperate enough to warrant desperate measures. I propose we grant Commander Reyes temporary authority over the 7th Fleet. The vote was close. 9 species in favor, 8 opposed. But it was enough. 72 hours later, Alina stood on the bridge of the Coalition flagship at Eternal Dawn. Around her moved the diverse crew. Crystalline Exoridians at navigation, massive Orn at weapons stations, tentacled Lanterns monitoring communications, and a dozen other species working together. Captain Jor-El, a tall Solari whose luminous skin reflected his unease, approached her. Commander, the fleet is assembled and awaiting your orders. Have all ships received the sealed tactical packages? Alina asked. Yes, Commander. But my officers are concerned. These maneuvers you've outlined go against all established coalition doctrine. Alina turned to face him. Your doctrine has led to 8 years of defeat. Tell me, Captain, what does your species value most? Jor-El seemed taken aback. The continuation of life, of course. Then we are aligned, Alina said, because what I'm about to do ensures your species continues to exist. She addressed the bridge crew. All ships initiate Phase 1. Authentication code Alpha 7 Echo 9er. Throughout the fleet, captains opened their sealed orders. Confusion turned to disbelief as they read Alina's plan. The 7th Fleet didn't head toward Theta-9, as the Council expected. Instead, they launched a ferocious attack on the lightly defended Corax communications hub at Varus Minor. The Corax, caught off guard, scrambled to defend the unexpected target. They're diverting forces from the Epsilon corridor, reported a Lantan officer. 2 battle groups redirecting. As anticipated, Alina said calmly, Phase 2, deploy the infiltration teams. While the main fleet engaged the Corax at Varus Minor, 5 stealth vessels slipped behind enemy lines. Aboard were specialists, humans, mostly, along with members of the Coalition's most adaptable species. Sir, Captain Jor-El said quietly to Alina, the Council authorized an attack on Theta-9. This is not what they approved. The Council approved my command, Alina replied. I never specified which target I would hit first. Realization dawned on Jor-El's face. You deliberately missiled them. I gave them hope, Alina corrected. And I'm keeping my word about destroying Theta-9, just not in the way anyone expects. For 18 hours, the battle at Varus Minor raged. The Coalition forces fought with surprising effectiveness, using tactics the Corax hadn't encountered before. Unpredictable attack patterns, sacrificial feints, and concentrated firepower overwhelmed the defenders. When the communications hub was reduced to debris, Alina ordered a swift retreat before the main Corax forces could arrive. The Coalition had suffered losses, nearly 20% of the engaged fleet, but they had destroyed a critical enemy installation. We've lost 37 ships, Captain Jor-El reported gravely. Over 8,000 crew members. Alina nodded solemnly. Each death serves a purpose. Status of infiltration teams. All 5 teams have reached their targets undetected. Execute Phase 3, Elena ordered. Throughout Korak's territory, the infiltration teams planted specialized devices aboard key supply vessels bound for Theta-9. Each device contained an engineered biological agent, designed by human scientists, that would contaminate the biomatter resources stored at the base. 48 hours after the battle at Varus Minor, reports began streaming in. Korak's war vessels across 3 sectors were experiencing catastrophic structural failures. The contaminated biomatter from Theta-9 had been distributed throughout their fleet, weakening the organic components of their ships. By the celestial light, Captain Jorel whispered as he watched the reports. "You've poisoned their entire supply chain. I've introduced a targeted biological agent that degrades their ship material," Elena corrected. "It's not technically poison." "This is not how the Coalition conducts warfare," Jorel said, his luminous skin flickering with moral conflict. "No," Elena agreed. "It's how humans conduct warfare when survival is at stake. We identify the enemy's weakness and exploit it without hesitation." The reports continued to flood in. Korak ships were withdrawing from the front lines, their massive organic vessels literally falling apart around them. The invasion of Coalition space had ground to a halt. When Elena returned to the War Council chamber a week later, the atmosphere had transformed. Hope mixed with unease as she stood before them. "The Korak's advance has been stopped," she reported. "Their fleet is in disarray, and they've abandoned their positions in the Epsilon corridor." Chancellor Mira's expression was complex, grateful yet troubled. "You disobeyed the Council's understanding of your mission." "I achieved the objective," Elena countered. "Theta-9 is no longer producing viable biomatter for their war machine." "Through biological warfare," Admiral XL Torek said, the word laden with distaste, "a method banned by Coalition protocols." "Those protocols were written by species who had the luxury of fighting conventional enemies," Elena replied. "The Koraks show no mercy, so they deserve none." General Vrykith, who had opposed Elena's command, now studied her with newfound respect. "What is your next proposal, Commander?" "The Koraks are wounded, not defeated," Elena said. "Now is the time to strike decisively. I need expanded authority, not just over the 7th Fleet, but over all Coalition military assets." The chamber fell silent. The request was unprecedented. Admiral XL Torek leaned forward. "And if we grant this authority?" Elena's expression remained impassive, but her eyes burned with cold determination. "Then I will show you how humans end a war." The vote was no longer close. 15 species in favor, 2 opposed. Desperation had given way to a dangerous hope that perhaps the ruthlessness of humanity was exactly what the galaxy needed to survive. As Elena left the chamber, Chancellor Mira fell into step beside her. "Your methods disturb many on the Council," she said quietly. "But they voted for them anyway," Elena replied. "Because you've given us something we'd lost. Hope." Mira paused. "Just tell me this. How far are you willing to go to win this war?" Elena's pace never faltered as she answered. "As far as necessary." The war that had seemed lost was now at a turning point. The Koraks had encountered something they couldn't anticipate or understand: human ruthlessness. And Commander Elena Reyes was just getting started. Unconventional warfare. The main hangar of the Coalition flagship Eternal Dawn bustled with frantic activity. Engineers from a dozen species worked alongside human technicians to retrofit Coalition vessels with new weapon systems. The enormous space echoed with the sounds of welding torches, power drills, and heated technical debates in multiple languages. Commander Elena Reyes strode through the chaos, her attention fixed on a massive device being installed on a Xeridian destroyer. The cylindrical weapon, matte black and bristling with cooling fins, looked distinctly out of place on the elegant crystalline ship. "The pulse emitter integration is nearly complete, Commander," reported Major Evan Chen, her chief weapons officer. "We've adapted it to work with their power systems, but the Xeridians are still concerned about the structural integrity." "Their concerns are noted," Elena replied, her tone making it clear that the installation would proceed regardless. What's the status on the biological defense shields? Installed on 80% of the capital ships. The rest will be complete within 12 hours. Elena nodded in satisfaction. In the 3 weeks since taking command of the coalition forces, she had implemented radical changes. Human weapons technology, previously withheld from the wider galaxy, was now being integrated across the fleet. Many coalition species were uncomfortable with these new systems, but none could deny their effectiveness. Captain Joril approached, his luminous Solari skin pulsing with barely contained concern. "Commander, we've received a priority transmission from the War Council. They're requesting your presence immediately." The subtle emphasis on requesting wasn't lost on Elena. Despite her newfound authority, many council members remained deeply uncomfortable with her methods. "Very well," she said. "Major Chen, continue the modifications. I want this fleet combat-ready within 48 hours. The War Council chamber was tense when Elena arrived. Several council members refused to meet her gaze, while others watched her with undisguised hostility. Chancellor Mira spoke first, her voice carefully neutral. "Commander Reyes, we've received disturbing reports from the Taurus sector." Elena remained standing, hands clasped behind her back. The liberation of the Taurus mining colonies was successful with minimal coalition casualties. Liberation. General Vraketh of the Orn rumbled, his massive form rising from his seat. "You detonated seismic charges on 3 moons. The resulting tectonic disturbances killed every Corax in the system, over 30,000 individuals. They were military installations supporting the Corax war effort," Elena responded calmly. "There were civilian worker drones among them." Ambassador Kirnav interjected, his tentacles writhing in agitation. "Beings with no choice but to serve the hive." Elena's expression hardened slightly. "There are no Corax civilians. Their entire species functions as a military collective. Every worker builds their war machine. Every drone extends their reach. The concept of innocence doesn't apply to a hive mind." Admiral XL Toric's crystalline form shimmered with barely contained anger. "That is not your determination to make, Commander. The Coalition has ethical protocols, even in warfare." "Your ethical protocols were leading you to extinction," Elena countered. "I was given command to win this war, not to lose it nobly." The chamber fell silent at her blunt assessment. It was Chancellor Mira who finally spoke. "No one disputes the effectiveness of your strategies, Commander. In 3 weeks, you've liberated systems we thought lost forever. But many are concerned about the way forward. Your recent requisition for prohibited weapons research has alarmed several council members." Elena's gaze swept the room. "The Corax are adapting to our tactics. They've already developed countermeasures against the biological agent we used at Theta 9. We need to stay ahead of them. By developing antimatter cascade weapons," Admiral XL Toric asked incredulously. "Weapons that could render entire planets uninhabitable for millennia." "Weapons we would only need to use once," Elena replied. "Sometimes the threat of overwhelming force prevents the need to use it." General Vraketh slammed his fist on the table. "This is not humanity's war alone. You cannot make these decisions unilaterally." "Isn't it?" Elena asked, her voice suddenly cold. "Your species have fought for 8 years and lost ground every day. In 3 weeks under human command, we've reclaimed 12 systems and halted the Corax advance. If you want different results, you need different methods." The room erupted into arguments until Chancellor Mira called for order. "We will put the weapons research to a vote," she announced. "Until then, Commander Reyes, please restrict your operations to conventional warfare." Elena's expression didn't change, but something dangerous flickered in her eyes. "Chancellor, time is not on our side. Our intelligence suggests the Corax are developing a new type of vessel, something that could negate our recent advantages. Even so," Chancellor Mira insisted, "we must proceed according to coalition protocols." Elena nodded stiffly. "As you wish. but I request expedited processing of this vote. Every day we hesitate gives the enemy time to recover." As she left the chamber, Alina's communicator beeped. It was Major Chen. "Commander," he said urgently, "long-range sensors have detected unusual activity in the Vega sector. You need to see this immediately." Back aboard the Eternal Dawn, Alina studied the sensor readings with mounting concern. A massive Corax fleet was gathering near the Vega sector, larger than any they had encountered before. "Analysis," she asked Lieutenant Rivera, her intelligence officer. "The fleet configuration is unlike anything we've seen." "Commander," Rivera replied. "Based on energy signatures, they've incorporated some kind of new technology, and they appear to be heading toward the Helios cluster." Alina's jaw tightened. The Helios cluster, with its rich resources and strategic position, was crucial to the Coalition's war effort. More importantly, it contained 3 heavily populated worlds, including the human colony. How long until they reach Helios Prime? At current speed, 72 hours. Helena made her decision instantly. Order all available Coalition forces to converge on the Helios cluster. We intercept them before they reach the populated worlds. Captain Jorel frowned. "Commander, our fleet retrofitting is incomplete. Many ships still lack the new defensive systems." "We go with what we have," Alina said firmly. "And contact Earth. Tell them we need Project Prometheus immediately." Jorel's luminous skin paled. "Project Prometheus. But the Council just denied your weapons requisition." "The Council denied research into new weapons," Alina corrected. "Prometheus already exists." Within hours, the Coalition fleet was mobilizing. Ships from 17 species, many still being retrofitted with human technology, formed up around the Eternal Dawn. It was an impressive sight. Over 300 vessels ranging from massive dreadnoughts to agile strike craft. Yet Alina knew it might not be enough. The Corax fleet was nearly twice their size, and the new vessels at its center represented an unknown threat. 48 hours later, a small human transport arrived. It carried only 3 cargo containers, each bearing the insignia of Earth's Defense Force and prominent hazard warnings. Alina personally supervised their transfer to the Eternal Dawn's secure weapons bay. Admiral Excel Toric's holographic image appeared on the bridge shortly after. "Commander Reyes, I've received reports that you've brought unauthorized weaponry aboard the flagship." "Defensive measures," Alina replied, not looking up from the tactical display. The Council voted against new weapons research," Alina interrupted. "These are existing weapons, developed on Earth years ago. The vote doesn't apply." The Admiral's crystalline features hardened. "This is a direct violation of Coalition. We are about to engage the largest Corax fleet ever assembled." Alina cut in, her voice deadly quiet. "A fleet that could potentially wipe out 3 heavily populated worlds, including billions of your own people. So unless you're offering a better solution than what I have in those containers, I suggest you let me do my job." After a tense silence, the Admiral's hologram disappeared. The Coalition fleet took position at the edge of the Helios cluster, forming a defensive screen before the populated worlds. Alina's strategy was in place, a complex series of formations designed to counter known Corax tactics. "Corax fleet entering sensor range," announced a Lantan officer, his tentacles working furiously over the controls. "Configuration matches predictions, but, Commander, we're detecting massive energy signatures from the new vessels, like nothing we've encountered before." The tactical display updated, showing the approaching enemy fleet. At its center were 7 massive vessels, each at least 3 times the size of the largest Coalition dreadnought. "Analysis of the new vessels," Alina asked. Lieutenant Rivera looked up from her console, face grim. "They appear to be equipped with some kind of energy absorption technology. Our conventional weapons may be ineffective." Alina nodded, unsurprised. "They've adapted, as expected. Order all ships to Formation Delta. Prepare to deploy Prometheus on my mark." As the Corax fleet drew closer, Their new strategy became apparent. The massive central vessels acted as shields, absorbing energy weapons fire that would have destroyed conventional ships. Behind this nearly impenetrable barrier, the rest of the Corax fleet prepared to unleash devastating firepower. The first exchange was brutal. Coalition ships fired everything they had, but the massive Corax vessels simply absorbed the energy, their grotesque organic hulls pulsing with captured power. Then they returned fire. 20 coalition ships were destroyed in the first volley alone. The bridge of the Eternal Dawn shook violently as a glancing blow struck their shields. "Shields at 60%, called out a Xeridian officer. "Their weapons have adapted to penetrate our defenses." Alina watched the tactical display, her expression calm despite the chaos. "Hold formation. All ships maintain distance and continue firing. Keep their attention on our main fleet." Captain Jor-El looked at her in disbelief. "Commander, we're being slaughtered out there." "Trust me, Captain," Alina said quietly. "This is going exactly as planned." While the main fleets engage, 3 small coalition vessels, stealth ships with human pilots, slipped behind the Corax formation. Each carried one of the containers from Project Prometheus. "Stealth team in position," Major Chen reported. Alina nodded. "Deploy Prometheus." The 3 stealth ships launched their payloads, small, nondescript missiles that headed directly for the massive Corax vessels. The enemy, focused on the main battle, didn't detect the approaching threat until it was too late. The missiles didn't explode on impact. Instead, they penetrated the organic hulls of the Corax ships and released their contents, swarms of microscopic robots. Nanites, programmed to attack organic matter at the molecular level. The effect was immediate and horrifying. The massive Corax vessels began to disintegrate from within, their organic components literally coming apart. The ship's ability to absorb energy faltered, then failed completely. "All ships, concentrate fire on the compromised vessels," Alina ordered. The Coalition fleet responded with a devastating barrage. Without their absorption capability, the Corax superships were vulnerable. One by one, they began to explode in spectacular fashion. The remaining Corax fleet, suddenly without their technological advantage, fell into disarray. Alina pressed the attack mercilessly, pursuing the retreating enemy ships and destroying as many as possible. When it was over, the Coalition had achieved the most decisive victory of the war. Of the 7 Corax superships, all had been destroyed. Their supporting fleet had been reduced to less than a third of its original size. But the Coalition had paid a heavy price. 98 ships destroyed, thousands of lives lost. In the aftermath, Alina stood in the Eternal Dawn's observation deck, staring out at the debris field that had once been 2 mighty fleets. Captain Jor-El found her there, his luminous skinned and with exhaustion. "The Council is demanding an explanation about Project Prometheus," he said. "They're calling it biological warfare on an unprecedented scale." "It was nanite technology, not biological," Alina replied wearily. "And it saved billions of lives today." "At what cost, Commander?" Jor-El asked softly. "Those nanites, they caused unimaginable suffering. Even the Corax." Alina turned to face him, her expression haunted despite her resolute tone. "War is suffering, Captain. The difference is whether that suffering has purpose. Every decision I make is to ensure our survival, not just as individual species, but as a galactic community. And what happens when the war is over?" Jor-El pressed. "What place will humanity have in a peace built on methods like these?" Alina turned back to the viewport, her reflection pale against the darkness of space. "That's tomorrow's problem. First, we have to ensure there is a tomorrow." As the Eternal Dawn prepared to return to Coalition space, reports came in from across the galaxy. The Corax were retreating on multiple fronts, abandoning recently conquered territories in their haste to consolidate their forces. For the first time in 8 years, the Coalition wasn't just holding ground. They were reclaiming it. The war was turning decisively in their favor. But as news of Project Prometheus spread, so too did fear of humanity's methods. In chambers and meeting rooms across Coalition space, the question was no longer whether they would survive the Corax, but what price they were willing to pay for victory, and whether their human allies were saviors or simply a different kind of threat. Elena knew these debates were happening, but her focus remained singular. The Corax were wounded but not defeated. Their hive mind would analyze, adapt, and return with new tactics. And when they did, she would be ready with something even they couldn't anticipate. The war had entered a new phase, one where conventional rules no longer applied. This was humanity's kind of war now, and Elena Reyes intended to end it once and for all. Humanity unleashed. The War Council chamber had never felt so divided. On one side sat the Hardliners, species who had embraced Commander Elena Reyes's ruthless tactics after witnessing their effectiveness. On the other side were those who believed the Coalition was losing more than just lives in this war. They were losing their soul. Elena stood before them, unflinching under their scrutiny. 3 months had passed since the Battle of Helios, and in that time, Coalition forces had reclaimed nearly 40% of previously lost territory. But the cost had been high, not just in casualties, but in principles abandoned. The Corax have withdrawn to their core systems, Elena reported, manipulating the holographic display to show the current battle lines. For the first time since this war began, they are on the defensive. At what cost? Asked Ambassador Kirinav, his tentacles writhing in agitation. The nanite weapon you deployed at Helios violates every ethical protocol in Coalition law, and reports from the liberated systems describe tactics that border on genocide. Elena's expression remained impassive. The Corax don't take prisoners, Ambassador. They don't understand surrender. Every conflict with them ends in either their victory or extinction. So you choose extinction for them. Chancellor Mira asked quietly. I choose survival for us, Elena countered. The Corax hive mind learns from every encounter. They're already developing countermeasures against our nanite technology. If we hesitate now, we lose everything we've gained. Admiral Excel Toric's crystalline form glinted under the chamber lights as he leaned forward. What exactly are you proposing, Commander? Elena's eyes narrowed slightly, the only indication of the weight of her next words. We take the fight to their homeworld. The chamber erupted in shock. Since the war began, no Coalition force had penetrated deep enough into Corax territory to even contemplate such an assault. Their homeworld, Corexia Prime, was protected by the most formidable defenses in known space. Impossible, General Vrakith declared. Even with our recent victories, we don't have the numbers to breach their core defense network. Numbers aren't everything, Elena replied. The Corax have never faced an enemy on their home soil. Their psychology doesn't account for it. That gives us an advantage. Chancellor Mira studied Elena carefully. You have a plan. It wasn't a question. I do, Elena confirmed, but it will require a weapon that only humans possess. The room fell silent, tension thick in the air. What weapon? Admiral Excel Toric finally asked. Elena met his gaze directly. The Nova Protocol. Even those council members unfamiliar with the term could sense its significance from the reaction of those who recognized it. Several representatives physically recoiled. Stellar manipulation, Chancellor Mira whispered, horrified. You would destabilize a star. Not destabilize, Elena corrected. Control. Temporarily accelerate its fusion process to create a precise solar flare directed at the Corax defense grid. The collateral damage, Admiral Excel Toric began, would be significant, Elena acknowledged, but contained to military targets if executed properly. General Vrakith's massive form rose from his seat. This goes beyond ruthlessness, Commander. This is playing with cosmic forces. This is what humanity does, Elena replied, her voice suddenly hard. When faced with extinction, we use every tool at our disposal. The Corax would do the same if they had the capability. The debate raged for hours. Some council members supported the plan, seeing it as the only path to decisive victory. Others were adamantly opposed, arguing that such tactics crossed a line from which the coalition could never return. In the end, the vote was 7 species in favor, 6 opposed, with 4 abstaining, the narrowest margin possible, but enough to authorize the mission. As Elena left the chamber, Chancellor Mira fell into step beside her. They walked in silence for several moments before the Chancellor spoke. 3 months ago, you gave us hope, Commander Reyes. Now you give us victory at the cost of our principles. Elena's pace didn't falter. Principles are a luxury of the secure, Chancellor. Once we've won this war, you can rebuild whatever moral framework you choose. And if there's nothing left of who we were, Mira asked softly, if we become as merciless as the enemy we fight. Elena finally stopped, turning to face the Chancellor. For the first time, Mira saw something like doubt flicker across the human's features. There's an old saying on Earth, Elena said quietly. Better to be judged by 12 than carried by 6. It means that survival must come first. Everything else, history, judgment, morality, only matters if you live to face it. Mira's luminous skin pulsed with emotion. I hope you're right, Commander. For all our sakes. The operation began 3 weeks later. A task force of 50 ships, the most advanced in the coalition fleet, all retrofitted with human technology, slipped into the Corax home system using experimental stealth drives. At their center was the Eternal Dawn, now modified beyond recognition from its original design. On the bridge, Elena reviewed the final preparations. Captain Jor-El stood beside her, his luminous skin dimmed to near darkness, a Solari expression of deep concern. The Nova module is online, Major Chen reported. All systems nominal. Elena nodded. Begin the countdown. 90 minutes to optimal stellar position. The plan was precise in its terrible elegance. The Nova module, technology developed in secret by Earth's Defense Force, would fire a concentrated tachyon beam into a specific region of the Corax sun. The resulting disruption would trigger a massive solar flare directed at the planet's northern hemisphere, where the majority of the Corax defense grid was located. With their defenses temporarily disabled, a second coalition fleet, waiting at the system's edge, would jump in and launch a devastating attack on the exposed Corax homeworld. Commander, Captain Jor-El said quietly, I feel I must register a final protest. This weapon, it crosses a line. Elena's gaze remained fixed on the tactical display. Your protest is noted, Captain. But the Nova Protocol isn't just about winning this battle. It's about ending the war.